This is Alaska, and you're listening to the Cabbages Hip Hop Podcast.
This is Steel Tip Dove. You're listening to the Cabbages podcast.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Gary. Gary, we're back. Gary, we're back. Are you excited?
We are back. That's true. We took the summer off.
Why are you talking like you just got an NPR job?
I had a very nice summer. It was great. I miss it very much.
You missed the summer?
Yeah, it was a good time.
What?
Yeah.
I'm excited. We're back. We're doing things. Cabbages. We're talking about Nightbreed with one of the best rap records of the year.
Yeah.
People that made it are coming. We're gonna have a good time. Aren't you? Do you want to have a good time?
Alaska, Still Tip Dove. Yeah, they're great. Let's get to the guests.
Gary, I want to ask you a question real quick. Gary, did you miss me? Are you happy to see me?
We'll be right back. I am so excited to introduce our guests for today's show. Joining us now are Alaska and Steel Tip Dove. This New York-based pair comprised of the legendary, yes, I said legendary, Def Jux / Addams Family great, and one of the most important studio figures in hip-hop today, have given us two incredible albums in 2 years. Their latest is called Reverberations of a Dead Man's Ego, which is available via Fused Arrow Records, wherever music is streamed or sold. Hello and welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Very excited.
Both Jeff and I have been speaking quite plainly about how much we enjoy the new record, and we've been going back and forth,
blasting it nonstop.
Oh,
that and MJ Linderman, I can't get enough of either one of your records.
I don't know if I've heard MJ Linderman.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, he's wonderful, but not rap. But
okay, that's cool.
Excellent record. Yeah.
MJ Linderman's not here, so we won't talk about that anymore.
Okay.
You sure?
It's just the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He's not
Alaska,
listening?
no. But Alaska, I just want to say, as someone who's been listening to music for a while, this new album with Dove is a shining example of kind of what hip hop artists can accomplish kind of in middle age, not the least of which being like the mature themes that you were including on this record. And for me, speaking as, a man deep in midlife crisis, I host a rap podcast in my 40s that we post on the internet. I can relate. So, because that's it. Like, you can have a lot of choices you can make in midlife. You can buy an expensive sports car. You can get hair implants. You can have an affair. You can indulge in a serial killing spree while plotting the genocide of a subhuman race of creatures localized entirely in Western Canada. There's so many things you can do in midlife. And this movie is exactly like that in a way. It is almost entirely precisely that.
I would say that it's the reason this album was made. If Danny Elfman didn't score this movie, I think they probably could have just used this. It's like Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz. You could sync them up.
I think you could, depending on which cut you're using, because there's a few
That's why we brought you
film.
on.
There is,
we tested the theory and it worked.
I watched
Exactly.
the director's cut by accident.
That's the only one that seems to be out there.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what we all watched, I think.
Well, on the streaming platforms, yeah, that's the one that's generally available. But if you do a little bit of digging, you can find the 3.5-hour Cabal cut, which includes it's largely the same sequence of events, but there are a few differences in there. There's some more sexy monster stuff, and if you are lost listening to this right now, it will make sense when we explain what the fuck this movie is. But starting now,
We're going to be able to explain what the fuck this movie is?
Hopefully, within the time allotted, we can get there. Hopefully
I'm excited because I've watched it twice and I'm confused.
Yeah, I guess that's probably a good place to start. My first question has to do with what this is, but no, I like to take a step back because before we get too deeply in this, I want people to understand who our guests are and kind of what their tastes are. So, Alaska, my understanding is you're a bit of a horror movie buff, and I'm sort of wondering, kind of in the 90s, what sort of kind of your horror movie taste generally, or any particular 90s films in particular that you were fond of or reach for?
I mean, I guess 90s stuff. 90s is kind of a blind spot for me because I was in college at the time, and I was in a small town, so there wasn't a lot of theaters. Mostly like Scream but I was also like kind of like pretentious. So like, like Tarantino movies and Boondock Saints and stupid shit like that. Like thinking like, oh, this is deep. I didn't really get, I was really into horror when I was young, and I got really back into horror like probably like pre-pandemic, like maybe 2 years before COVID kicked off. And then since then, I've just been like deep diving again. Like it's the only genre of movie I watch at this point. But I've also been very big like on slashers. I've always been a fan of slasher movies. I've never been into sort of like possession movies, religious horror, folk horror. Like, I don't know. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the devil. So all of those things kind of don't scare me. Whereas, a boy who drowned in a lake that grew into a giant behemoth and regenerates every couple years and comes out and kills campers in the same place. That makes sense to me, and it scares
No,
me.
you read my autobiography.
Yeah.
It's nice of you to read my autobiography. It's
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's long and it's has a lot of glaring omissions, but
And self-published. So
yeah.
wow. We didn't have to go
Amazon
there.
really does wonders for that.
I mean, the whole midsection about the Jews running banks was a little weird, and it didn't fit in with the rest of the
It
story.
was so long. Listen, I was on a lot of
It
drugs.
was self-published, so it's kind of
A
standard.
lot of drugs, and I didn't go to a lot of banks,
Yeah.
which is weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I was thinking
Only
about.
blood banks.
If more people buy the book, then Jeff can afford to edit it.
That's right, and have a bank. That would be
Yeah.
really
A
a
bank would be
treat.
great. No more keeping it under the mattress.
Yeah.
No.
Now, Dove, you've been with us before, and for those who don't recall, you were on last year, and we did a wonderful little film called Day Shift, starring Jamie Foxx
Oh, you got Day
and
Shift.
and Snoop Dogg. Oh, Jeff remembers. Great, you were there too.
Yeah, well, was I?
We're about vampires, so I feel like we're getting back into the same sort of like vampires
Yeah,
who live on
you
the fringes of
crazy.
society. You were just, it's his punishment. Like, and I wanted to ask you kind of a similar thing that we were asking Alaska, but you're putting out so much stuff these days through Fused Arrow. Like, there's just release after release after release. Please make it a little easier on me if you could. But just beyond that, like, do you find time to watch movies, to consume stuff that aren't made for you to watch for this show in particular?
Well, yeah, this one I ended up watching like half last night, half today, or whatever. But yeah, every once in a while I'll go to the movies on the weekend. And it's funny because I was never a horror, like I'm just like whatever movie is good. Like I never had a specific genre that I loved or whatever. But everyone else's like, yeah, did it start pre-pandemic or did it start during the pandemic? Like, did it start around when you started, Alaska, or did it start even later that all of a sudden horror has become elite? Like, when did that start? It's only within the last few years.
Yeah,
Did
I
everyone
think
start like loving horror again? Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It seemed to be much more
you could make
popular
a
than it
horror
was
movie on a
decades
very low
ago.
budget.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. But I
Okay.
think also like I always equate horror movies to a roller coaster. Like it's safe danger.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of want those things. And there were actually studies during the pandemic that people that watch horror movies were dealing with the pandemic better than
I mean,
people
like,
who didn't.
That's pretty awesome.
yeah, COVID's terrible, but if you had to choose COVID or literally what happened in this movie, you'd probably choose COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like if what
Yeah, you'd
happens
go
in that movie,
underground
you're not
with
going to get
literal-
COVID anymore,
Yeah, well,
right? Like
It depends. I mean, what character am I? Am I Mac tonight? Am I the main guy?
that's
Who
the
am
first
I?
thing I thought when I saw that dude.
yeah.
Of course it was. It's Moon
Yeah, I
Man.
know. Really
He's
missed
got a
time
moon
opportunity.
face. There's only been one other character in the world that's had the real moon face,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
that's Mac tonight.
And I think there's some somewhat contemporaneous. I mean, I don't remember the exact full chronology of Mac Tonight's appearance in the McDonald's cinematic universe, but I feel like that it's probably around that time, into the late 80s, early 90s. Feels about right.
Yeah, which came
Yeah, I guess
first,
that's
the
right.
Moon Man or the Moon Man?
Yeah. We'll
It's
deal
an
with that in
interesting question.
we'll deal with that in the reader mailbag episode later for sure. We'll get on that.
I got into horror. I never liked it, and I share the pre-shared notion that I was an elitist dick and was like, horror's stupid. Why would we do this? Let's just watch P.T. Anderson movies, cry together. But In the pandemic, I like lightened up on it. I watched a lot of it, and now I'm like addicted. And I think there's something to there's sort of the rise in like internet culture of like, you know, we don't care what the critics say. The critics pretty much always crush horror, especially in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, it's sort of a like easy target. This stuff's stupid. Scaring me is easy. Like it's an easy way out. And I sort of fell in with those, you know, those thoughts and those ideas. And now I'm like, oh, dude, I'm not saying it's like particularly hard, but it's a lot harder than they made it out to be to make like a good horror film.
It's like writing a great pop song.
Yeah.
It's really tough to write like something very
It feels easy.
Poppy. It feels easy, but it's real easy to be corny.
And Clive Barker was like on top at this point as a writer.
Yeah.
He was on top. And then I don't know I should have probably looked up the history a little more on Clive Barker. Maybe Gary did, but
you probably should have. Thankfully, I did. Which is
yeah. But I mean, I know that it started as horror novels that like really took off. And then he got into film after. Is that correct?
He had done some theater. He had done some kind of film stuff, but nothing in terms of like professional. And then he was writing. He kind of transitioned from theater to writing. And then so his Books of Blood anthologies were short stories, horror stories, kind of building these worlds. And they got a lot of attention. He got this great blurb from Stephen King in the 80s that said Clive Barker. He's something that was like, I've seen the future of horror and it is Clive Barker. So, and that was like on all the books. So if you were somebody who was interested in that stuff, like reading Stephen King books, like that's as big an endorsement as you can get. And so those and some of the things got
no Dean Koontz, but
few things are Goosebumps. But he did write some screenplays in the 80s for films that I haven't seen, and probably none of you have seen, because these seem pretty obscure. It's kind of these mid-80s horror monster flicks. One was called Underworld, and one was called Rawhide Rex. So he'd written screenplays for those two, and then he got to direct a film of his own based on his own novella, The Hellbound Heart, 1987's Hellraiser. And so Hellraiser,
an absolute stunning classic,
is definitely a film that if you haven't seen after this, whether or not you choose to watch Nightbreed, listeners, you should definitely watch Hellraiser. It is certainly
if you've done no Barker at all, please start with Hellraiser. It's a good film.
It's a good thing to start with. I imagine you may have seen it, but that's sort of like his background kind of leading up to this point. Was he had a film under his belt. He did it lean enough. They were willing to give him more stuff. He was the hot commodity, turning these novels, these horror novels into movies. Had been a thing to be doing with Stephen King. It was the next logical step to have him there. So that's just the summary of what that is. So don't worry, Jeff. I did your research for you.
Thank you. As always. And why are you still complaining about it? We've been doing this for like 74 seasons, and Gary's like, well, don't you come prepared for anything? It's just not going to happen, baby. I live this life off the cuff.
I want to ask our guests, because we're talking about horror movies. You smoke weed, or would do that? I want to ask you guys, because it's difficult for me sometimes to frame this, because I am not a horror movie fan, as Jeff does. I genuinely dislike horror movies. I've enjoyed horror comedies, and there are a few franchises in horror that I have spent some time with, but for the most part, I have huge blind spots with it. And Nightbreed was a film that I remember as being a guy who went to the video store a lot and seeing the thing and going like, this is not for me. Just like Puppet Master or any of the other things where the cover looks scary. I'm like, I'm not going to want to watch this. And having watched this now, I have to ask you guys, just starting out, is this a horror movie?
At the time it was made, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so.
It's a horror comedy. They had a lot of jokes. They weren't some were funny, some were really
awkward and weird.
Out of place. Yeah. But yeah, it was a thriller horror. Like, you can't.
It felt more like a Goonies or an Indiana Jones to me.
Yeah, but there was some
action adventure
right in the forehead. Yeah. There was some much more gore in this than both.
The exploding body in the sun. that was horror. I think it's hybrid for sure.
I guess for me, I never was scared for a second.
Well,
Like,
but yeah,
most times
that's-
if it's a horror, I gotta be at least a little scared or creeped out or something. And I didn't feel anything like I fucking loved the movie.
well,
I
so then what's
absolutely
Goonies?
adore
What are you calling that? Because
I
I
would-
agree, Goonies is not horror, but
No, I don't know. It just felt that way to me. And it could just very well be the
No,
Danny
I'm asking
Elfman
for a
soundtrack
genre
or the Danny
of
Elfman score,
Goonies.
which gave it that feel.
Genre of Goonies is action
Thriller?
adventure children.
action adventure,
Action adventure children's.
Yeah.
thriller. No, thriller's more psychological. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it could walk the line. It's Clive Barker. I would assume he would label it as horror.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think that in Clive Barker's mind, if you were to ask Clive, let's put it this way, if you were to ask Clive Barker what this movie is, I think you get a long answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you ask Clive Barker what he had for breakfast, you get a long
He
answer.
doesn't exactly. He doesn't. I don't think that he came into this intending for people to be like, what a fun horror movie. Now I'm going to go do something else. He really wanted you to get sucked into this world and try to figure out what this is. Is it aliens? Is it
I mean, to me,
monsters?
this is a movie.
Is it what is it?
This is the movie.
Is it zombies?
for-
They're kind of zombies in a way, but
Yeah.
different rules.
with vampire.
You could get shot in the
rules.
back and die in this, or in the knee.
Yeah, why were they dying if they were getting shot sometimes and then other times they
They
weren't?
can the
I
way
have
I
s-
understand. Okay, so we're going to get into some rules because
But
there are
before
a
we
lot
do
of
that, I will
weird
say
rules.
the genre of this movie is a movie made for makeup artists because man, they went so hard. Like,
went
if you're a
ham.
makeup artist fan, if you're like a SFX artist or whatever, this movie must be high up there for
Yeah.
those people, right? Because they spent a lot of time making a lot of stuff that came out pretty good for the for the
Yeah.
time. It looked
I mean-
fucking crazy.
I guess it could be like in the same sort of genre as Aliens.
I'm listening.
Like, it's sort of a horror world, but it's an action adventure movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like
I'm with that.
there's like the creature feature aspect to this. I think about like
Mhm.
Creature from Black Lagoon, the sort of films they used to make that kind of that predate our modern idea of a horror film, for example. I think there's some of that goes into it, and I think that's probably where some of the influences lie. This also is, kind of the post the original Star Wars trilogy. So,
Mhm.
some people have sort of called this like the Star Wars of horror movies. That's like later, more contemporary, to now interpretations of the film, and we'll definitely go into some of those
And
views
it
of this.
definitely felt like there was supposed to be more.
Yeah, well, there's supposed to be a trilogy. There's supposed
It
to be
just-
Yeah,
three
this was
movies.
supposed to be 3 movies.
So and the way that at least the director's cut ends sort of plays out for here's the next stage and here introduces the next villain and all
Yeah.
these things are there, which is great. It's great to have that. But
I'm
like,
guessing
there's
that-
no
I
way
mean,
there's no way they were going to make the second third movie.
There's 3 cuts we know of. Theatrical, directors, which is what we all watched, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's
'Cause
always
that's
on
like
the
all you
screen,
can
yeah.
find.
that was on
Uh,
Tubi. I watched that Tubi.
That was what's on
okay,
Tubi.
so we all watched on Tubi. Love it. And then there's this like 3.5 hour director's cut.
The
I
Cabal
get the
cut.
feeling that there were a lot of cuts of this film, that a lot of people had a lot of different ideas about what this could be. Because if they had 3.5 hours of usable footage,
Well, it's not.
I
usable.
can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's just because they made a 3.5 hour
I
cut
w-
doesn't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like they can use 3.5 hours,
Yeah, well,
which
I
means
mean-
there's way more of this thing.
Look at
And
how
I'm
many
sure that they
costumes
could
they
cut it
had.
away. They could cut this thing into 4 different movies. It could be a buddy cop movie. It could be like a steamy monster bang flick. I mean, like there's so many things this thing can do if there's really that much out there.
Yo, I have a very specific question. The 2 women go to Medellin together
Yep.
to check it out for the first time.
They do.
She gets out of the car to go in. The other woman goes, "I'm gonna stay here and have some fun." It literally seems like she's about to jerk off. Did either of you guys
Correct.
get that? Okay, thank you. It was such a
That-
weird, awkward, like I'm gonna do a sex thing. Did any of you pick up on that? It looks like only Jeff.
My thing about
She
that
just
was
delivered it in a way that made it sound like she
Well,
was
it's 'cause
going
she
to
was
do
just
something
talking-
naughty or
Yeah,
or
like and what?
something you wouldn't
What the
expect
fuck?
her to do while you're checking out a graveyard.
It was so weird.
Hmm.
It was so weird.
I just couldn't figure out what her specific motivations were, which is my issue with a lot of this film and the characters is that it's like there's so many fucking people and creature people to keep track of. It's fucking hard. So this woman shows up, becomes your friend in the bar, and is now going to go travel with you to a cemetery the next day, and then like doesn't go all the way into the cemetery with you. Like you got this far. I thought maybe this was, and again, this might be me thinking about some of the kind of queer allegory that's in this film, which again, I think we'll address at some point during this conversation. Maybe there's meant to be some sort of, sexual something between these two people.
Was that cut out of the film? I think there's a much steamier version of this film out there, is all I'm saying.
What I think is the case is that
Cabal cut.
Turns out we're all gonna have to watch 3.5 hours of this motherfucker.
All right, let's all pause. We'll reschedule for another time.
We'll be back. It's been so good to have you on.
Why don't we just do a watch along?
I did try to watch it. I did try to watch the Cabal cut. And it was like, it opens with extra scenes of Boone and Laurie in the very beginning, but like there's no audio, so they have subtitles kind of to go through what was supposed to happen in those scenes. And
are they making out in those scenes as much as they made out in the scenes that we got?
No,
they made out a lot, dude.
A lot of very open mouth kissing going on.
So much kissing.
So much kissing.
A lot of like her dressing up in like very fancy lingerie and him having like the shittiest tidy whities ever.
Which feels,
to be a man in 1990.
I mean,
just like they didn't even know boxer briefs existed. Like, they didn't know we could have choices.
Yeah,
they were killing their sperm counts. They had no idea.
You either had to be an adult dressing like a little boy, or a man with giant boxers, and you're, sack sagging.
Thank you, Marky Mark, for your contributions to culture.
Followed you out to the graveyard. Good to see you too.
His mask was maybe the only scary part of the movie.
His mask was great.
That mask was wonderful.
It's really good. Is it in that scene behind you? Is the mask in that scene behind you? There he fucking is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's there.
Ooh. If this was to be a slasher film, that element of it was, I think, pretty solid. Like they made him seem pretty scary. The way the zipper was kind of.
It could have easily just been a slasher film, which I think the original was.
That's how
cut
they
out a lot of
cut
monster stuff,
and
they cut it to be a slasher film and like focused on the worst acted but kind of most interesting character in the film.
David fucking Cronenberg. We haven't even said his name yet.
He should have,
David Cronenberg is the bad guy in the movie. And I just want to point out where David Cronenberg was at this point. I mean, look, first of all, this movie's Canadian as fuck. All right, just so put it out there. It is shot.
It's more Canadian than the slasher TV series.
It's fucking.
That's Canadian.
It's mostly in Alberta. Shot mostly in Alberta. There's some soundstage stuff in the UK, but it's mostly shot in Alberta. The whole movie proudly takes place in Calgary during the annual Calgary Stampede, which is the rodeo they keep referring to in the film. Like, it's a big deal. It is as Western Canada as fuck. And they just expect people watching this to know what they talk about the rodeo.
And it's not Brett the Hitman Hart.
I don't get. So like I'm already kind of looking at this, and I'm married to a Canadian, so I have some sense of insight into the whys of this stuff. But it's fucking Cronenberg, and this is Cronenberg after fucking Scanners, Videodrome, The Fly, and his like movie right before this was Dead Ringers. And apparently, while working on this movie, he was like writing the Naked Lunch script, in his trailer. Which is a film I really enjoy. Again, my own pretentiousness that's in there. But like he'd never done a film like this before in front of the camera. He'd mostly done like some cameos for other people, some things in his own earlier work, but like this was not a thing. What a fucking decision to be like, this is
that was a choice, dog.
This is your bad guy.
Yeah.
What Barker must have seen in him. Like it astounds me that this is who we got and how good he was as this character.
Yeah, he was creepy.
Psycho. This creepy fucking psycho. That said, like
his plan was pretty fucking sick.
Well,
can I ask a simple question?
We gotta talk about some plan stuff.
Ask a simple question.
Here's a very simple question. Who was on his team?
No.
Was there anybody working with him toward a goal of a goal?
What was his goal?
I guess eliminating Median. maybe if I had to, if you were
Yeah,
to force
I
me
think
to
he stumbled
Eliminating-
upon that.
I
I
think
don't think
the
that was
initial
anything he was
goal-
into.
I think the initial goal was to eliminate night breeders.
okay, yeah,
The ones
sorry, yeah.
that were out in the world.
I'm not 100% sure of that. I
don't think
You're
so.
the
None
one
of
that
us
gave me
are.
the theory.
well, I'm because I'm only, but I want to hear Les's take on it because like
I think his only goal was to kill people and get away with it. He was just
Well,
going to
what do you-
frame this dude.
Okay.
And this dude
The
led
way
him
this is
to-
cut, because they wanted it to be a slasher, I think that's what comes off. But I think the point, if this was cut better, they would have kept parts of it where he's explained, like, he has been killing night breeders that are out in the world. These are just the freak night breeders in the graveyard.
You're thinking all the people he was killing were night breeders.
I wait, hold
he
on.
makes
hold
an
on, hold
allusion
on.
to it. He makes an allusion to it when he's killing the old man later.
you're losing Dove.
Because now I'm thinking back of that opening scene where he's like his doctor and he prescribes him medicine because he's
It's
having
LSD.
dreams. So he gives him hallucinogens or whatever, right?
Yep.
What are you implying, Alaska, that the doctor was just a serial killer?
The doctor was a serial killer. Yeah, that was my impression, that he was a serial killer.
Like separate story. So like separate story over here, he's doing some serial killing. And then this story is is him trying to find the fall guy.
I think he was killing people and he was going to use this guy to be the fall guy.
Okay.
Maybe he had done it before. I don't know. But like he was using this kid to be the fall guy. Somehow this kid ended up at, what's it called? Median?
Midian,
Yeah.
And he ended up there. And then he realized, like, oh shit, there's this whole world there. But he was also still alive and he had to clean up that loose end.
Why did the doctor know that Median was real, or what's the...
I don't think he knew. I think he was just following the
Okay,
Craig
okay.
Harper character.
A good acting performance in this hypercritical role would have, like, in tones and inflection. Like if you read the script, you wouldn't read it like I'm talking right now and everything you say sounds exactly like this monotone and nothing ever changes. It would be like he would say things with an inflection, and that inflection would explain to you, like, oh, he's learning what more about the mythology of these creatures he's been hunting.
No, he wasn't hunting creatures. He was
I think he
serial
was.
killing. He was serial killing.
I like that theory, but I just didn't see it anywhere.
I don't think it was explained well or acted into the
Alaska's
script.
theory is that he was just doing some murdering. Like that was just his thing.
Yeah.
Not of night breeders, of regular people, right? He implied that 8 families had been killed in the last several
Later
months
he
or
said,
whatever.
I've killed 8 families of breeders.
So
the vague thing there is he talking about night breeders or is he talking about just people who have children?
Natural breeders. They call
Like,
them
yeah, he
natural
just like
breeders.
scoped out a family and was like, that one.
All right, well.
So
I more don't understand it now than I
let
had.
me attempt as
This
best
is
as I can.
This is an issue with the film,
'Cause
is
this is-
understanding what the fuck is happening. I was really fucking frustrated at times. Sorry.
Let me attempt, if I can, to try to synthesize these two things, because I've watched it twice, as we often do. First time I was completely stoned, and the
Right.
second time I was stone sober. And I try to do this intentionally. My first experience is just a visceral reaction to what's happening, and then the second time around, I try to figure out what the fuck I just watched. And so in this case, I think there's something in between here that is what's happened. I think we have to take into account that Boone's story, the story of Boone, our lead, is that he is this prophesized figure, which we don't really realize until the third act, that he is this prophesized figure.
Okay.
So Boone has these visions of Midian, which he is sharing with his therapist. His therapist is using these visions that he's been conveyed and got all this information about to recreate these visions that the person has as crimes that he's committing so that he can ascribe them to this person. I don't think at that stage when he's committing these crimes that he realizes who he's killing and what it is. And what I think happens is as he learns more information over the course of the film, Dr. Decker, David Cronenberg, as he learns more about what's happening over the course of this story, by the time he gets the scene with the guy in the shack with the Barbie dolls hanging from the ceiling, who's clearly they're trying to protect the people of Midian, that he's now come to the point where he's realized there's a connection between the people he killed and what's the people who are living this place Midian. For him, they're connected with these visions and prophecies that that Boone had, that he now thinks are real prophecies, not just something he's turned into reality for convenience of wanting to murder. And now he's calling them breeders because he sees them as connected to that. I don't think this is dealt with very well. I don't think this is explained very well. It's just what I'm seeing after having
here's the thing. I think
where
it probably
it's where we get together.
I think it probably is explained well. But either the stuff we needed to understand all of that was cut out.
And replaced with more monsters.
Or, and this definitely can be both, the second lead, the co-lead, the most important character in the film, was played as though he had never spoken aloud before. That this was his first time giving it a shot, and he did it as well as he could.
You think
because there's ways to deliver this stuff and like make you understand the script, what is happening. The writing comes alive. It's supposed to come alive.
So in that regard, there really is nobody on Cronenberg's side. He is a lone wolf. He is so he's using the police because he's like, well, police will obviously attack these people because they look weird. You know what I mean? So okay.
You know what
okay is about how you can go.
You know what would explain a lot of this? The tapes. There are tapes of what he's talking about, and we are given one voiceover one time for a very short amount of time.
Oh yeah,
and then that's it. That's the only other allusion to the tapes. The tapes contain all the answers. Like, is he describing where Nightbreeders who are out in the world live? Is he like, what the fuck is he talking about in these dreams?
Well, and you said we'd come back to this, either Alaska or no. What's up with how to kill them? Like, okay, they die in the sun. That's fine. That makes sense to me. Dark, living, sun, melting, or dust, whatever. Sometimes you shoot them and stab them and they live. Sometimes you shoot them and stab them and they die. Is it?
Okay, this is my theory, is that they can live forever if they're not killed. Like, man has to kill them.
But no, but there were times when they did kill them, like doing something that would kill you. Right. They did that and then they didn't die.
I think it has to be either man or the power of the sun, because she says in the film, some of us die in this. Some of us, when we go out in the sun,
she did say hurt. Some of us,
but not all of us. Some. And then some of us, we die when we get shot in the back. And some of us, when, like, she had like different rules for different ways of dying, but made it sound like those were the only way to kill certain people. You know what I'm saying? I was so confused.
I don't. Yeah,
I didn't know what she was saying, but the way she explained it was, there are ways to kill us, but there's different ways to kill different groups.
I think it's just really like, if you had a speaking part, you live. If you didn't, you get killed.
That's probably pretty good. Pretty good assessment. Part of the problem.
I'm sorry. I love trying to figure that type of shit out and really make it real.
Yeah. But part of the problem is, unlike most monster movies where you get a set of rules and you know what to follow, you can only kill a wolf man this way. Vampires can't handle these things, stuff like that. We were basically showed this is a group of people who are not homogenous. They are a diverse group of creatures who don't all have the same vulnerabilities or strengths. And so it's a menagerie of different types of monsters. Some of these people seem to be living. Some of these people seem to be undead. Part of the failure of explaining this in the movie is that they're all lumped together as this one group. But as we meet and encounter, especially when we get down into we finally get to the proverbial fireworks factory, we get down into the catacombs that is Midian, we start to see these people have, like, some of them have their heads in their chest.
Yeah.
Some of them have little things that come out of their bodies.
There was the amazing one that was like a cooked turkey with a face on it.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous. There was one point of there was some, I don't even know, it was a pretty human looking, but somebody just rolling a cigarette or rolling a joint or something in one scene.
There's a lot that had weird hand things on their faces. Like one had little baby hands that roll around their face. Another one had just fingers from their chin.
It actually had like a
A
full,
full, yeah, almost
no
like a full
thumb,
hand.
but like they were obviously 4 human fingers
Yeah.
coming out of a chin of one of the
Great.
monsters.
Yeah.
It was
So
excellent.
like the problem is that we don't get to spend, even though this director's cut is 2 fucking hours, we don't get to spend enough time learning
How
about
is that? How can
these
that be true?
monsters.
It's true though.
To be learn about these monsters, to be able to say like, okay, so now I have a clear sense. This is not one type of creature. This is multiple, and they've all come together for sanctuary in Western Canada.
What's the implication there? They make an implication that like if he was there the first time you went down there, they were like, no, we don't accept you because you're not a killer.
Yeah.
Didn't they say
So
that to him? You're not a murderer.
Apparently, they have a heightened sense of naturals. They understand. For those who didn't watch, naturals meaning like humans that are
Alive people.
alive people,
Big naturals.
not these zombie monsters that were.
There's a lot of big naturals in this movie too, by the way.
There is a lot of big
There are
naturals.
all
bunch of big
monster
naturals,
based.
Yeah.
He's really horny.
It really did. There's that one scene where like the woman had blood on her finger. I was like,
rubbed it on her tits. That was
rubbed
crazy.
it.
That was crazy. Yeah, they probably had some crazy shit cut from this movie.
Oh God, yeah. Because
there is an orgasm of fucking material sitting out there.
If
Yeah.
you're into that sort of
Guaranteed.
thing,
Yeah,
Well, 'cause
I mean, this thing was supposed to be very steamy.
yeah, it was meant to be R-rated. Like so,
Yeah.
they filmed shit that didn't get used for sure.
Oh, and then they didn't rate it R?
I think they ultimately did, but then the theatrical cut, like it was supposed to be a horror movie.
I think
They're
it
trying
was
to
for
sell
the
to that audience.
amount of killing and blood that
it could have
Yeah.
gotten the dreaded X maybe if they included everything.
Exactly.
I think so.
Like
too.
like Hellraiser. I forget how the
This was
cuts go on that one, but
pre
there's some of
NC-17, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still talking X-rated at this point. We're before the boxing Helena stuff of I think that was the first commercial released NC-17 or maybe the second. And that's a little later in the decade. I'm glad we started out this season and this episode obviously with a movie from 1990 because we're sort of getting this transition that's happening in terms of film.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what the fuck is the deal with these creatures. I don't really know if we are going to get it. All I know is that when we finally go down there, we see like 24 of them and we're like, okay, so there's like a small group of them. But when we get to the third act of this film, when all the cops and rednecks all come
I don't
together,
think we saw
there's
all
like
of this thing.
100 of these fucking people.
Yeah.
Right.
At least 100 of these things down there.
There was
Every extra is
prison
suddenly,
industrial complex.
Yeah.
Where they were
There
keeping
was something that could fly.
gigantic prisoners.
It's a graveyard. It's
Yeah.
below a graveyard. How much space? I mean, no, I know that Western Canada has a lot.
like-
Western Canada has a lot of space. I know this. That like
It does.
the further north you go, it's vast. There's not a lot of people living. So like I get it, but like how much underground catacombs were there that these people could just like have
Good
levels of it? Like it's like a reverse apartment.
There was like
building.
Greek architecture down there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was like
So we're not supposed to. It's not hell, right? There's
Hell.
we don't know.
No,
You know,
it's
like
not
that's
hell.
not
It's
that's
not
This
not
is
part of it.
this is part of
It's-
Earth.
There's
Yeah,
a
it's
Baphomet, but there's
Baphomet is a demon, right?
Yeah.
right.
But it's not hell. But also it's like, and this is where Jeff and I did a little bit of rabbit holing on this. Midian exists in the Bible
And in the Quran.
and in the Quran. It goes
And
back
there's another early holy text that it's in as well.
So what did you describe it as in those
it
sacred
starts. This is I have this. I fucking have this. It
And
starts
an
in
entourage
Genesis.
for a while.
It
Yeah.
starts in Genesis. So like this is tribalism. Remember they talk about tribes. So like this is tribalism that is directly pulled, Barker's own interest in using religious imagery to tell these stories that he's trying to tell, whether it's the Hellraiser stuff or this, like there's a lot of that goes on. So Midian is the name for one of the sons of Abraham. Specifically, the Midianites are the descendants of Midian. So not in this movie specifically, in the biblical sense.
Right,
he was the fourth of the 6 sons of Keturah, who Abraham married after Sarah died. So like, if you are somebody who's read the Old Testament with anything, you'll know who the fuck these people are. But the point is that Midian existed in there. And then, as Jeff pointed out, they are driven away. And I don't want to get political here. I don't want to get political here.
This is just what happens in the book.
Oh,
In the book of-
polycharged.
In the book of Judges, the Israelites,
The king, the
Dra-
Israelite king.
Israelite king, drive the Midianites out of their land and into what we call today Palestine.
Really?
So
It's a real in the parlance of like, you know, like history. It's a place. The holy books claim these places were like founded by sons of Abraham. But either way, Media existed
in both
in biblical
the
sense,
Bible,
sense.
in the
in
Quran,
yes.
in the.
But I'm talking about like in real life, like it was a part of like, it's essentially like near the Fertile Crescent.
There's geography that because there's been something like that of where it is. So I mean, depending on what your level of belief is, you can make whatever assessments you want. But the point is like it's there in scripture, it exists in those places.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that you would have a story like this where these people could be these descendants of these people. And there's been this diaspora that has happened where these communities have been driven out to these places. Of course, we don't get any of this other than these people are freaky deaky and doing shit
But they like
on the ground with fingers coming out of their
obviously
faces.
They have been cast out by normal society because that's what is in their ancient, very newly renovated, I guess, walls of paintings.
In this
like
movie,
show a human war with these people and that
okay,
they lost and were driven out.
Yeah.
okay.
So like that would be a very easy like one-to-one comparison as
But
to
for
why
what-
he
but
made
for-
this choice of name.
does that only work if in the group of the people who live in Medellin or whatever, some of them are still quite literally living? Because otherwise, why would several dead bodies who only existed? Maybe the dreams is what's throwing me off. I need to forget about the dreams. They weren't real. They were just LSD trips. But like,
I don't know that they were LSD trips. I think the Midians were
why were they at
in my
war?
case, Baphomet was calling him to come be the savior.
Okay.
And it was happening in dreams. He took those dreams to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist flipped out, started murdering folks about these dreams, and then was like, fuck, the police now know that all these people are dead. But they've come to me being like, do you know anyone who might have done this because you like deal with crazy people? And he was like, give me a little while. And then
But they don't go into the genesis of why there was a war.
No.
At all.
No,
at all.
I think that was coming in the second film.
Like
maybe?
the flashback to like when they were that was crazy.
With Babette touching him, touching Laurie to show her that. Holy shit, that was cool.
Yeah. Speaking of Laurie, did anybody else find the scene of her singing to be the most unhinged part of this movie?
That was that.
I
wish I could read back my texts right now that I sent to Gary during that scene. The second time I had to watch it, I was just like, "This, I'm fucking furious." The first time I was really high and I could laugh.
It went on for so long,
but then it like goes on. And the second time I was like, "I'm stone sober and I'm furious that you got Danny Elfman to make the soundtrack and didn't even like." I mean, he didn't write this song? This was
it's a cover. It's a cover from like the 60s. It's like a 60s pop song, like from 62. It's like Johnny Get Angry is it's camp. And that's the other thing with this film, like this is camp. And it's like I'm looking at Cronenberg and I'm looking at David Lynch and I'm looking at all these elements of things that precede this, of where Barker is cribbing from. He's cribbing from those guys, quite literally gets Cronenberg. He's cribbing from Hieronymus Bosch.
Cronenberg should have made this film.
Like all this.
This film would have been absolutely incredible if he made it.
This would have been like,
and also never would have come out because it would have been rated double X.
Double X. It would have been the Caligula of Star Wars films.
Absolutely.
And I just realized that part of the film, which again, just the tonal shifts are the fucking wildest, but they played like that entire fucking song. And it provides nothing in the context of why we're supposed to care. I mean, like, why should we care about Laurie? because of
If
that.
I was
scene.
on an acid trip and I walked into that song, I'd be like, I'm not sticking around the earth. The earth
Bring it back
place
over
is
the end
dead,
credits
man.
too.
What?
What's that?
They brought it back over the end credits
They
as well.
did.
Yes, of course they
Yeah.
did.
I didn't even notice that.
But
It
why?
happened.
But why is it there? What? That's a choice, and they
Yeah.
chose to make it be the whole
Oh.
thing. Like I've
Yeah.
seen music used in like, and it's later than like David Lynch films, and it's like Blue Velvet, or in Lost Highway, or Mulholland Drive. There were all these sorts of scenes where there is a performance by a woman singing in all those films.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're used to effect. They're used well.
Correct. They're not just for the sake of. Why is that Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet? There's a reason why you see her sing that. The performance of Silencio, which is basically, oh sorry, not Silencio, Llorando, Roy Orbison's crying in Spanish in Mulholland Drive. There's a purpose to that scene as well. Like there is no reason for this. So
The
it's like,
leprechaun raps in Leprechaun in the Hood.
Yeah.
And
There's
it
also
furthers the
the
plot.
woman singing "It's Raining" in "Only Built for Cuban Links" right before Rainy Days. You know,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? There's it's a thing to do, but this
it's camp.
like, truly doesn't bring anything to the table earlier or later in the
It
film.
was
There's
definitely
no
like a
build-up.
favor to
She
that
just
actor.
at some point is like shows up to the workplace of this mechanic and just hard makes out with him in front of everybody and is like, come see me play tonight. You're like, oh, this person's a musician, sings a song, and then none of it ever gets brought up again. Never.
Yeah.
So you've never had a girl come to your job and kiss you.
Just like pull me straight out of where I am
Yeah.
and hard make out with me in front of all of my coworkers.
Yeah.
No.
Wow. I'm
I
sorry.
know it shows,
sorry to hear
doesn't
that.
it?
I also
are you even
like
working?
It's working from home is what's happening now. It's working from home. This
Did-
pandemic has
You've
ruined
been
us.
working.
Did there feel like there was a full switch of tone when they brought the main guy Boone right down into the thing, and then they're
Mhm.
standing around the thing, and the guy strikes a match to light his cigarette,
Yes.
and then has to say sorry. It's like a bit out of a fucking hack comedy.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what's going on here? Like,
That was the guy that like peeled his face.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
He was my
a
favorite
delight.
character, hands down.
He's
was
your favorite
funny.
character? Okay.
Yeah, I love him.
He was the comic relief in a lot of ways.
Narcissa. Yeah. Narcissa was the
Was
the
that his
guy.
name?
His name's I had to write notes. I've written notes and then everybody's
Oh,
name.
God.
You know what I mean? Like what is I'm like, oh, Narcissa, he's the one who cut his face. It's like I wrote down Bet's mother, I called her Smockin because she could bring the smoke. I've got Narcissa, I wrote cut up his own face. I wrote Shuna Sassy was the porcupine. Onaka was the one with the doggy. Kinski is Mac Tonight. And Peliquin, for all you Simpsons fans, I call the big one Bitey because he's the one who bit. Peliquin, I have a question about specifically because he shows up and he's this sort of like he's the one who bites in the beginning and this.
Okay.
And once you realize that like none of these people, like hardly any of these actors are black, the sort of like skin dreadlocks that Pelican has are very upsetting to me, especially on the second viewing where I realized like they are doing a thing with this, and that the only discernibly black character in this entire film is a essentially non-speaking role for Baphomet, who was not, who I don't believe
And
was
the
an
cop.
actor, might have
The
been.
cop.
The cop was the only other one, and he's
Yeah.
not given nearly as much screen time as he deserves, and really not enough.
Was this pre-Predator?
Yeah. There was no reason whatsoever to like. You could have just cut all the cop stuff and brought back all the sexy monster stuff.
I'm just saying it's
This would be a
weird
much
that this
better
film is you're seeing this theoretical diversity of monsters, but it is all just like versions of white people. It's just kind of odd to me on a second. Like, okay, like,
I've never
okay,
met
here's
a white guy
Leprechaun.
with his face in his stomach or a white guy. Well, I've met a couple of dudes that look like turkeys.
Okay, so you see, there you go.
Fair enough.
They're usually white dudes too, like
But they're usually
middle-aged
white
ones.
dudes.
Yeah.
It's a turkey trait
Yeah.
that exists in these people. I'm just saying, like, if it's supposed to be like the X-Men sort of thing, where the X-Men exists as a comic book as a allegory for racism, and so diversity is there across these characters. It's one of the great things about this, that this film that happened well after the X-Men comics have been out, and it's an allegory for queerness is kind of how the kind of more modern assessment of this film has been, or generally more about othering and just like the other, that this is how authority deals with the other, and this is how the other is exploited, abused, murdered, etc. Like, it's just surprising to me that they couldn't figure out maybe how to make it a little less that way, because you're using creature makeup at this
Well, I
point.
think it was 1990. There was only one black actor in Hollywood.
And this was in Canada, so
Yeah, I mean, geez, yeah.
Not even Hollywood.
And his name's
But,
Hugh.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's real light on that. It's real, like, just a tiny little tinge of like, this is activism,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
LaCroix, like just a
Yeah, I mean, it did have the very heavy-handed lynch mob scene of like everybody rolling
Yes.
to the graveyard.
yeah.
Yeah, but I also feel like
Were these
You know,
illusions, or were they just like
no, this is what happened in
they
these
were?
scenes.
No, I mean, like, I know what happened. What I'm saying, like,
Do you?
is there like a what the
I don't know if you
monsters
do.
are put upon, right?
Yeah.
They're by the end of this film, we're supposed to feel sympathy for the monsters.
On their
We're
side,
We're
cheering
yeah.
for
supposed
the
to think
monster.
that mankind is the monster.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. And
Yeah,
you know,
they didn't. This is a good movie, but it's not that good.
the thing is, it doesn't, I don't feel like if that's what it's
Fair.
going for, and I can see what it's going for, it's not necessarily sticking the landing. It's
No.
inelegant in the way it's trying to approach these things. And I want to be clear, I don't dislike this movie.
Nah, me neither.
Having seen this now, I can say I enjoyed the movie. This is like this is a pretty, if you're doing on a scale of 5 stars, this is, to me, this is a 3. This is like a little better. This is better than straight middle. This is like, I enjoyed enough of the elements of it. I think the slasher part of this was actually quite enjoyable. I would have loved to see Midian sooner, and I would love to have seen more of Midian,
Yeah.
not in Crisis. I feel like
There
we have so
seemed
many
to be
flashes of it.
I would love to see a layout.
Levels.
Like, I wish that there was like a just one scene like Wes Anderson does in all his films, where he does the thing where he explains everything about what's like. Here's Midian.
So
There's
wait,
the
did you just
jail
do a
in
Wes
Midian. These
Anderson
are like
remake of
this is where
Nightbreed?
they sleep. We don't know where they sleep. Do they sleep? I have no idea. They must sleep during the day because a lot of them can't go outside.
So is your vote then that if you could pick any director to direct this movie now, a reboot, you would choose Wes Anderson? Wes Anderson?
No, I would have chosen the guy that played the killer.
You would have chosen
The better
Cronenberg.
director of the two to direct the fucking film, and the other guy try to act. I think that would have gone better.
Let me pose that hypothetical to our guest, Sue. If you could put any other director on this film, past or present, to do a version of this, who would you hand this to? Who would you get this movie to?
What about Tim Burton?
That's an excellent choice too. I mean, you already got Danny Elfman there, so you got the score. You know, he'd done Beetlejuice and Batman, so Tim Burton could pull this sort of thing off.
Maybe.
Oh, what
I think
about
Tim Burton comes to mind because this Danny Elfman music, which did not match.
I
The
think the
film at
monsters would be
all,
way
I
more
felt
interesting too.
Yeah, you think so, right?
Yeah.
Jordan Peele? That would be
Jordan
cool.
Peele. So you can see a modern, like Jordan.
Well, then there
Jordan,
would just be less monsters. They like
Hmm.
Then we'd all have to pretend to like it.
the monsters would be.
I
would
like his
be
movies.
generational trauma, right? That would be the monster of generational trauma. Okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
monster would be a twist that we all knew immediately what it was in the first 5 minutes.
And
after-
it's like Jordan Peele has had his hand in the Clive Barker universe because he's an executive producer on that Candyman remake that came out a few years back.
Wait, was that a Clive Barker story?
Yeah, Candyman is a Clive Barker story.
Really?
So the original Candyman is based on a Clive Barker story. I don't know about the Farewell to the Flesh. I don't know how much it might just be like with all the Hellraiser movies. It's like based on characters by. But like, yeah, the Candyman is another one of those. That's sort of where he corrects for his diversity, I suppose, is in that feature. They get it righter, more right, at least in terms of how they're telling the story. But so there's Jordan Peele. I feel like you get fewer of the actual creature monsters. I think you need like a James Gunn sort of like really, messed up person who gets like ridiculous Netflix budgets to make silly looking things, and you just let them do it.
What about Damien Leone from Terrifier?
I can't watch that shit. I can't do it. That clown fucking scares me.
I would put him in anything.
I'm listening on that. That would be another one where like it would be highly underground because it would be too bright for a lot of theaters. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, 'cause he does all the effects work, and the effects work is insane.
It does.
I don't know. Whoever does.
Did you guys like this movie? You liked it, Tim, right?
Yeah, Alaska, you liked it, right?
I really enjoyed it. I did not expect to like it. Like when I turned it on, I watched the first half last night, and I was like, "This fucking sucks." I was so mad. Like I went to bed right after the song.
You're not the first to do that on this show.
I was like, "This is gonna suck," and then I turned it on at work today, and I just sat through. I was like, and just I
think watching it in installments makes it better.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean,
because like 2 straight hours after a while, you really feel beat up after 2 straight hours.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
But the second half of the film is so much more interesting. You get to Midian, you see the stuff, you see more creatures. It's what you thought you were, because we weren't misled into what we were getting into. We knew we were going to see monsters.
Yeah.
The people who this was marketed to in 1990, Fox and Morgan Creek, like that's studio.
Yeah, the trailer showed all the monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're clear on that, but like the trailer that showed it, the trailer that came out like 1990, the original one showed none of it. They even made the poster is even not the original was not the one that we know now that was used on the VHS, but the poster for the theatrical release is a picture from a different movie.
What movie?
I don't remember what it was, but
I always confuse this movie with Near Dark.
Oh, okay, sure, right.
And I wonder if it's because of the original poster.
They make it look like on the original one. It's on IMDb. I might put it in video for this just for people to see. But the original poster is like looks like it's a woman's eyes, scared, and it's from a slash. Make it look like a slasher film. And the original trailer, which you can watch on YouTube, it shows it and cuts it in such a way that you do see some creature stuff, but it is mostly presented as like a kind of a slashery horror movie, and that you think that these creatures are coming to get you, or maybe something like that. But it's not what you actually do end up with, which is this mishmash or melange of different genre elements pushed together that are coming from this biblical context with queer allegory attached, that Clive Barker somehow thought a studio like Fox would get and understand how to market in 1990 terms.
This movie was a long episode of Tales from the Crypt. That's what it was. Cool. And I'm not really complaining. I loved that show.
So I think we've all kind of assessed that we at least like it. Some of us more so than others.
I like it. No, I like it. Honestly, it was significant. Like, yeah, it was like this is gonna suck, and then I'm like, oh, this is fun. Look at all this crazy looking shit. Like, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Gary.
Yeah, Jeff.
Gary, we forgot one of the funnest fun facts of all time.
Oh, what was movie. That? There's some fun facts in
our podcast universe. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most fun facts I've found.
Sure, yeah, lay it on me.
The name of the main character at the time, that main character's name, that person would have been playing for I'm not sure if it's for the New York Yankees, but playing professional baseball. And now is the longtime manager of the New York Yankees baseball organization.
You're saying there's
Aaron Boone. I think it's spelled the same too.
There's a person in sports who has the same name as a character,
but they would have been playing then. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Sure.
You don't think that's fun? You don't think that's?
I mean, it's not like
you don't sound like it's a really fun fact. You don't.
It's not like when Alaska brought up that Hellraiser Bloodline, the same guy stars in it. Like that's a fun fact. Like that's kind of thing. Like if you're like
that's a fun fact. That's a fun fact. Yeah, I agree. It's a fun. But this is also a fun fact.
I don't know how much fun that is. Like, it's not like there's no baseball in this movie. There's no like thing. I mean, it's just sort of like it's an aside at best. There's so much we can talk about.
What do you?
There's so much. There's so much we could talk about.
Fun fact and aside are essentially the same, dog.
Well, fun is different.
Fun fact. I'm having fun. I'm trying to make some fun out of this kind of piece of shit movie.
This was
like fun. I wouldn't have to reach for these sorts of like fun trivia if we were watching something where we could really like get into a conference, maybe converse about it hard.
Yeah, I think we had a great conversation with our guests.
Of course, of course. We always
got
have
a
great conversation. I'm
bunch
just saying,
of movies.
we don't have to only do incomplete, incoherent movies. They don't have to be bad movies.
I mean, we're going to do the 90s.
We're going to do the 90s, baby.
We're back.
This
season.
Yeah.
We can do some really good movies.
We're experts at this.
We could do Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. I'm not like Cliffhanger.
Yeah,
we're not following this up with Cliffhanger. We're following it up with something good. Now, I love Cliffhanger as an idea and way, but let's not shoot all our chickens before they lay eggs.
Really, this is what you want to do? This is
fun.
I mean,
like we should do some like fun films. Yes,
this
but
was
we should
fun.
also do some like good old fashioned fucking cinema, man. Some good cinema that isn't just dumb and weird.
What podcast do you think you're doing?
I'm trying to change the culture, man. I want to be the change I want in the world.
We watch crap.
We don't have to. We can do what we want. We're free individuals. We are not contained to Midia or whatever that place was called. Funky Cold Medina. Midian. We don't have to live in Midian. You don't have to live like a refugee. Shouts Tom Petty.
I think we're going to have a good selection of films. The 90s is rich, fertile ground. We've done very little of it. I'm just saying, Cliffhanger is kind of fun. Hangs off a cliff.
We're doing a serious film next.
All right. Serious movies. Whatever you say. Cliffhanger's pretty serious. If you were hanging off a cliff, pretty serious.
I'm not hanging off a cliff.
It's the Cabbages Podcast Network.